Welcome back to Mr. Cursed. Before we start, I need to warn you, what you're about to hear is not fiction. These are 8 real encounters from abandoned Appalachian houses, and they're absolutely terrifying. People went inside these forgotten homes and experienced things that still haunt them today. Some heard voices, others saw things that shouldn't exist. If you're easily scared, maybe skip this one. But if you're ready for some true horror, then let's go. Real quick, subscribe if you haven't already, drop a like, and comment where you're from. Now, let's get into these chilling stories. I'm 49 years old, and I've been appraising real estate for 22 years now. I've walked through condemned crack houses, foreclosed mansions, properties where people died and weren't found for weeks. Nothing rattles me anymore. Or at least that's what I used to think before I took a job in Harlan County, Kentucky back in March of last year. My daughter had just left for college that semester. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty. And honestly, I was taking every job the county offered just to keep busy and help with tuition costs. When they called about appraising a foreclosed property that had been stuck in legal limbo for 40 years, I didn't ask many questions. $800 is $800. And I needed it. The drive from Asheville took about 2 hours, winding deeper and deeper into the Kentucky mountains until my GPS started acting confused about which dirt roads were actually roads. The Morrison house sat at the end of a deteriorating gravel drive, no neighbors visible in any direction. It was a 1920s craftsman-style home, white paint with black shutters and a wraparound porch. What struck me immediately was how well maintained it looked. The lawn was overgrown, sure, but the house itself seemed solid. Fresh paint, intact windows, no sagging porch boards or missing shingles. For a property that had supposedly been abandoned since 1984, it looked almost lived in. I parked in the driveway and checked my paperwork. Robert and Helen Morrison, both deceased, February 1984. Estate disputed due to conflicting wills from their 2 children. Property remained in limbo all this time while lawyers argued and family members died off. The county was finally forcing a sale, and I was here to establish market value. I unlocked the front door with the key the bank provided, expecting the usual nightmare: water damage, animal nests, black mold, collapsed seal, ings, copper wiring stripped by thieves. Instead, I walked into an immaculate home that looked like someone had just stepped out to run errands. The furniture was arranged neatly. No dust on any surfaces. The kitchen was spotless, with vintage appliances from the 1980s that gleamed like they'd been cleaned that morning. Upstairs, I found beds made with hospital corners. The bathroom faucets ran clear water when I tested them. Light switches worked, even though the power should have been shut off decades ago. My professional instincts started screaming that something was very wrong. I was in the living room, setting up my measuring equipment and trying to logic my way through what I was seeing, when I heard someone clear their throat behind me. I turned around. An elderly woman sat in a chair by the window, knitting. She looked up at me with a warm smile, like we were old friends. "Oh yes, dear," she said. "Robert and I have been expecting you. Would you like some tea?" I dropped my clipboard. It clattered on the hardwood floor loud enough to make me jump. Before I could speak, an elderly man walked in from the kitchen, carrying a tray with a complete tea service. China cups, matching pot, even a little plate of cookies. He set it down on the coffee table and gestured to the couch. "Please sit. You've had a long drive." I should have run. Should have been out that door and halfway back to Asheville before my heart rate settled. But I'm a professional, and I'm practical, and my brain was trying very hard to rationalize what I was seeing. Squatters, maybe. Elderly squatters who'd been living here illegally and maintained the place. That made sense. That was logical. "Mrs. Morrison?" I managed. "I'm from the bank. I'm here to—" "Appraise the house, yes." Helen set down her knitting. "We understand. And please call us Helen and Robert. We're not formal people." Robert sat down across from me and poured tea into 3 cups with steady hands. "You're wondering how we're here, I imagine. It's quite simple, really. We died here. February 14th, 1984, Valentine's Day. We'd been married 36 years. I stared at him. He was speaking in the same tone someone might use to describe their morning commute. We both caught pneumonia that winter, Helen continued, picking up her teacup. I noticed she didn't actually drink from it. Died within days of each other. The doctors said it was common with elderly couples. Lose one, lose the other soon after. But Robert and we never actually left. My hands were shaking. I set down the teacup I'd been holding without realizing I'd picked it up. You're telling me you're ghosts? Well, yes. Robert looked at Helen. Is there a better word for it, dear? I don't think so. We're certainly not alive in the traditional sense. She smiled at me again, and it was so genuinely kind that it made everything worse. When we died, there was light, calling voices, all the things people describe in near-death experiences. But we looked at each other and thought, why? We built this house, raised our children here, had 40 happy years together in these rooms. This is our heaven. Why trade it for uncertainty? Robert nodded. Death was just the end of maintenance requirements, really. No more aching joints, no more prescriptions. We still have our home, our routines, each other. What more could we want? I should have left then. Instead, I found myself sitting there, listening as they gave me a tour of their house, like normal homeowners showing off their property. Helen pointed out the kitchen where she still made coffee every morning at 7 a.m., even though she couldn't drink it. But the smell, she said wistfully. I do miss actual taste, but the smell is something. Robert showed me their bedroom upstairs. The bed was perfectly made. Habit doesn't die with the body, he explained. I still make it every morning. Helen still arranges fresh flowers in that vase, even though they're not actually there. Here. I checked my watch. It was 3 p.m. I'd been in this house for 3.5 hours. That's when the real fear set in. Not of Robert and Helen. They weren't threatening or frightening in any traditional sense. They were just lonely. Desperately, achingly lonely. And I realized I wasn't in physical danger. I was in danger of staying. You could join us for dinner, Helen suggested as we returned downstairs. Her voice was casual, but her eyes were hopeful. You're divorced, aren't you? Your daughter just left for college? You're going home to an empty apartment. I froze on the bottom step. How do you know that? The house tells us things about our visitors. Helen settled back into her chair. You're lonely, Carol. We understand lonely. We had only each other for 40 years, and that was enough. But it would be nice to have company again. Robert sat down across from her. Think about it practically. You appraise houses but can't afford to buy one. You work hard for money that's never enough. Your daughter will build her own life, call less and less. What are you going back to? Here, you'd have purpose, company, a beautiful home that's already yours if you want it. I looked around the living room, saw how perfect it was, how peaceful. No bills, no arthritis pain in my hands that made holding the measuring tape difficult. No empty apartment, no aging alone, just eternal routine with kind company. Then I noticed something. The family photos covering the walls and mantel all stopped at the same point. Happy pictures of 2 children growing up, graduating high school, college, getting married. Then, nothing after 1984. Do your children visit? I asked. Helen's face fell. It was the first time I'd seen her look anything but welcoming. Not since the funeral. They think we're gone. They think this house is evil because we chose to stay. Her voice got quiet. They do, and understand that this is peace. I walked over to a small desk in the corner and opened a drawer, somehow knowing what I'd find. Obituaries. The Morrison children, a son and daughter who'd both died in their 60s, never married, no children of their own. The articles mentioned depression, alcoholism, lives spent trying to understand what happened in their childhood home. They hadn't just been grieving dead parents. They'd been grieving parents who chose a house over moving on, who picked comfort over letting their children heal. I need to go, I said. Helen stood up quickly. Please, stay for dinner at least. We haven't had guests in so long. You haven't finished your appraisal, Robert added. You need measurements, photos, comparable sales. You owe the bank a complete report. They weren't threatening me. They were pleading, which was so much worse. We've been alone for 40 years, Helen said. Just each other, one evening of company. Is that so much to ask? I thought about my empty apartment, thought about eating another microwave dinner alone while my daughter was too busy to call, thought about how peaceful it would be to just stay here, have dinner with Robert and Helen, maybe visit again next week, and the week after that, until leaving became harder than staying. Then I thought about my daughter's face if I disappeared, thought about her spending the rest of her life wondering what happened, trying to understand, never being able to move on. I walked to the front door. It was unlocked. Open. I could leave right now. You'll come back, Helen said softly from behind me. When life gets too hard, when you're sitting in that apartment alone on Thanksgiving. You'll remember how peaceful it was here. Robert appeared in the living room doorway. The appraisal. We'll let you complete it. Just come back tomorrow. Finish your work. Professional courtesy. Please. I turned to look at them both. Two elderly people who seemed so kind, so understanding, so willing to offer comfort and companionship and peace. I'm sorry you're lonely, I said. Or your children couldn't help you. But I won't do to my daughter what you did to yours. I won't choose comfort over her future. Helen's expression hardened slightly. You'll regret it. Life is pain. We're offering you peace. Peace for me, I said. Pain for her. I choose her. I walked to my car, drove away, watched them in my rearview mirror, standing on the porch, waving goodbye. Not angry, not sad, just patient. They knew I'd struggle. They knew life is hard. They were betting I'd come back. I called the bank from my car, told them the property was occupied and I couldn't complete the appraisal. There was a long silence when I explained who was occupying it. They suggested I take a few days off. That night, sitting in my empty apartment, I almost drove back. My daughter texted that she was too busy to call. I ate dinner alone and thought about Helen and Robert in their perfect house, waiting. I called my sister instead, talked for an hour. It helped, but the pull was still there. It's been a year now. I'm engaged to a man I met at a conference. My daughter and I have dinner once a month. I started therapy. Life is still hard sometimes, still lonely, but I'm building real connections. I still think about the Morrison house, some days more than others. I've driven past it twice, seen Robert and Helen on the porch, always waiting. I didn't stop, but it gets harder each time. The house sold 3 months ago to a young couple. I sent them an anonymous letter warning them about the previous owners. I don't know if they read it. Last week I drove past one more time before moving to a different county. The couple was on the porch having coffee with Robert and Helen, laughing, comfortable. My fiancé asked if I wanted to stop and warn them. I said no. You can't save everyone. But I wrote a letter to my daughter, sealed it, told her to open it if I die before she does. Inside, I explained everything. Told her that if I ever seem too content, too satisfied with isolation, to remind me that pain means I'm still choosing life. The Morrisons chose a house. I choose her, always. Some abandoned houses aren't empty. They're full of people who gave up on living to avoid dying. And that's the most terrible haunting of all. Choosing existence over life, comfort over love, peace over the beautiful, painful mess of being truly, fully alive. I still have hard days. Days when I think about how easy it would be to drive back, to accept their offer, to stop struggling. But then my daughter calls, or my fiancé brings home takeout, or my sister texts a stupid meme, and I remember why I left. I'm not preserved. I'm living. And that's the victory. I'm 16 years old, and I don't talk about this much because it sounds insane. But something happened to me last October that I'm still trying to make sense of. I live in West Virginia, out in one of those areas where the towns are small and everyone knows everyone's business. My mom died when I was 12, cancer, And after that, my dad kind of checked out. He's a long-haul trucker, gone for weeks at a time, and I basically raised myself from middle school on. I stopped going to school around 9th grade. Just stopped. Dad never noticed, or if he did, he never said anything. I wasn't getting into drugs or stealing or anything like that. I was just invisible. I worked shifts at this diner sometimes, cash under the table, and that was about it. No friends really, not anymore. I'd had some back when I was younger, before Mom died, but after that I just kind of faded out of people's lives. It was easier that way, honestly. The night everything changed was a Friday in October. Dad came home drunk, which almost never happened. He had this woman with him I'd never seen before. Her name was Denise. He sat me down at the kitchen table and told me they were getting married and she was moving in. Before I could even process that, Denise started in on me. First thing, she said, you need to get a real job and start paying rent, or you're out. Dad just sat there, didn't say a word, didn't defend me, didn't tell her I was still a kid. Nothing. I went upstairs, packed a backpack with some clothes, the $230 I'd saved from the diner, my phone and charger, left around 11 p.m. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to be anywhere but there. I walked for hours on these dark, rural roads. It was cold, probably in the low 40s, and I hadn't brought a jacket because I wasn't thinking straight. Around 1 a.m., I was freezing and exhausted, and I knew I needed to find somewhere to sleep. That's when I saw the house. It was set back from the road, 3 stories, old Victorian style with half the windows broken out. I'd explored abandoned places before, back when I had friends, so I wasn't scared of it. I just needed somewhere warm, or at least somewhere out of the wind. I climbed through a first-floor window. Inside was weird. I expected it to be completely trashed, but it wasn't. There was furniture, dusty but intact, like someone had just walked away from it years ago and left everything behind. I found the kitchen first. There were canned goods in the cupboards, expired but still sealed. I opened a can of peaches from 2018 and ate them standing at the counter. They tasted fine. Upstairs, I found a bedroom that had clearly belonged to a teenage girl. Band posters on the walls, stuffed animals on a shelf, a diary on the nightstand. I didn't open the diary. That felt too personal, too much like violating someone's space. There were blankets in the closet. The bed had a mattress that looked gross but usable. I was so tired I didn't care. I wrapped myself in the blankets and fell asleep around 3 a.m. I woke up at 6 a.m., needing to pee. The house was gray with early morning light. I went to the mirror above the dresser to check my face, just out of habit, before going back to sleep. The reflection wasn't me. I mean, it was me. But it wasn't. The girl in the mirror was older, maybe 23, wearing a grocery store uniform. Her face was hard, tired, angry. As I watched, she turned away from the mirror, and I could see she was in a tiny, broken-down apartment. She lit a cigarette, coughed, checked her phone. No messages. She looked so alone, so bitter, like she'd given up on everything. Then it ended. The mirror was just a mirror again, showing me, 16-year-old me, staring back with my mouth open. I stumbled away from it, breathing hard. What the hell was that? A dream? I'd just woken up. Maybe I was still half asleep. I went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, looked up at the mirror above the sink. Different vision. Me again, but at 25 this time, eating in a jail cell. Crying. My hands were shaking. I recognized the look. I'd seen it before on people going through withdrawal, but I'd never done drugs. I wasn't going to do drugs. How could I be in jail at 25 for drugs I'd never taken? The vision faded. I backed out of the bathroom, my heart pounding. I should have left right then, but I didn't. I needed to understand what was happening. I went into another bedroom and looked in the vanity mirror. Me at 30. Business casual clothes, nicer apartment. This looked good at first, successful. But the vision kept going, and I watched myself at work. Watched my boss put his hand on my lower back while he talked to me. Watched myself freeze up and say nothing because I needed the job. Watched myself go home alone, pour a drink, then another, then another. Wake up the next morning and do it all over again, day after day. Success that was really just quiet desperation. I tried another mirror. Me at 35, overweight, in a messy house with 3 kids screaming and me screaming back. I looked exhausted, resentful, trapped. Like I hadn't wanted any of this, but now I was stuck with it forever. I tried to leave then. I was panicking, needed to get out. But I passed a hallway mirror on my way to the stairs and I made the mistake of looking. Me at 19, dead, overdose. The vision showed my funeral, almost nobody there. My dad crying, Denise looking uncomfortable. 2 girls from the diner, empty church. Dead before my life had even really started. I screamed, ran down the stairs and sat there shaking. The house was showing me my futures. Possible futures. Every mirror showed a different path my life could take. And so far, every single one had been terrible. I needed to know if there were any good ones. I forced myself to go to the kitchen mirror. Me at 27, wearing nursing scrubs. I looked tired, but I was smiling. I was helping an elderly patient, being gentle with them. The vision followed me home to a small apartment, nothing fancy but clean. I called someone, a friend, maybe a boyfriend, made dinner, studied from a textbook. This future looked hard, but it looked okay. Not great, not perfect, but possible. I went to the living room. There was a big mirror over the fireplace. I looked. Me at 40, in an office. There was a plaque on the wall. Tessa Martinez, LCSW. I was talking to a teenage girl who was crying. The vision me said, I was you once, 16, nowhere to go, no future I could see. But I found a way forward, one step at a time, and you can too. The girl hugged me. This future looked meaningful, real. That's when I heard the voice. Not out loud. It was in my head, but clear as anything. Every door you walk through leads somewhere. I'm showing you where they lead. The grocery store, the jail, the endless cycle, the early death, or the hard climb to something better. You choose, today, tomorrow. Every day is a choice. I yelled at it, at the house, at whatever was doing this. That's not fair. I'm 16. I don't know how to make those choices. I don't have parents who care. I don't have money. I don't have support. How am I supposed to choose the right path when I'm starting from nothing? The voice answered, You're not starting from nothing. You're alive. You're smart. You're young. That's more than nothing. That's everything. I couldn't stop myself after that. I looked in every mirror I could find. Me as an addict at 22, dead at 24. Me as a waitress forever, growing old and bitter. Me married to someone who hit me. Me homeless at 30, mentally broken. But also, me as a teacher at 35. Me as a mother at 32 with a stable, happy life. Me as a small business owner at 45. Then the house showed me one more. Me at 50, in a comfortable home, surrounded by people at a birthday party. Kids, grandkids, friends. I looked content, like I'd built a real life. The vision rewound and showed me the path. GED at 17, community college at 18, nursing school while working, meeting my husband at 24, building from there. It wasn't easy, but it was possible. That's when I remembered the diary. I went back upstairs and opened it. It belonged to Sarah Henderson, 16 years old, who'd run away in 2018. She'd written about the house, about seeing her futures. All of them were bad, she wrote. I couldn't see a way forward. Her last entry said, I'm leaving. I'll figure it out my way. I looked her up on my phone. Sarah Henderson had died of an overdose in 2020. She was 18. I found more names carved in the attic. Jessica, 2001, Michael, 2007, Emma, 2013, Dante, 2016, Sarah, 2018. 5 runaways before me. I looked them all up, all dead young or living terrible lives. The voice came back. You're the 6th. The first 5 saw the futures and ran anyway. They chose not to choose, which is itself a choice. It leads to the worst futures because you drift instead of steer. You can be different. Why do you do this? I asked. Why show runaways their futures? This house belonged to a family therapist who specialized in foster children. She died here. Something of her remained. The house became what she was, a mirror, showing you yourself, forcing you to see your choices have consequences. I found a photo, Dr. Patricia Hendricks, 1945-2015. An article about her death said she'd helped thousands of at-risk youth. The house had been her practice. I sat there for hours. It was 4 p.m. by the time I really thought about what I was going to do. My phone battery was at 15%. I could call my dad, could call the school, could call social services, or I could keep running. My phone rang. My dad. I answered. "Tessa? Where are you? I'm sorry about last night. Denise is gone." I told her to leave. She said those things about rent and I was drunk. "I'm sorry. Come home, please." I started crying. "Dad, I dropped out of school. Months ago. I've been lying to you. I'm lost. I need help." And pause. Then, "Okay, we'll figure it out. Together. Where are you?" I told him. He said he'd be there in an hour. Before I left, I looked in the living room mirror one more time. Me at 45, in a nice office, plaque on the wall that said, "Tessa Martinez, LCSW, Child and Family Therapist." Talking to a runaway teenager, helping them see their futures. The house showing me. You could be this, if you choose it. My dad arrived and hugged me hard. "I've been a shit dad since your mom died," he said. "I ran from the pain by taking long hauls. That ends now. Local routes only. We'll fix this together." "I need to get my GED," I told him, "and therapy. We start Monday." That was 3 years ago. I'm 19 now. I got my GED, finished community college, just got accepted to State University for social work. My dad kept his promise. He's home every night. We eat dinner together. It's still awkward sometimes. We're still rebuilding, but it's real. It's not easy. I have days I want to quit. Days the good future seems impossible. But I remember the mirror visions, the bad futures that came from quitting. And I think about Sarah Henderson, dead at 18. Before I left for university, I went back to the house one more time. The mirrors were just mirrors, no visions. I left a note. "To the next runaway, look at the good futures, not just the bad ones. They're harder to reach, but they're possible. Choose them." I did. Tessa, 2024. I still think about that house sometimes, about Dr. Hendricks, who spent her whole life helping kids like me. The house didn't save me. It showed me the map. I had to walk the path myself, and I'm still walking it. Some days I mess up. Some days I do well. But I'm building towards something instead of drifting into nothing. That's all any of us can do. I'm 41 years old, and I've been a hospice nurse for 12 years now. Used to work up in the mountains of North Carolina at a place called Mountain View Hospice. If you don't know what hospice is, it's where people go when there's nothing left to do but make them comfortable until they die. I was good at my job, maybe too good. I got attached to patients when I shouldn't have, and I think that's what made me do what I did. I work at a CVS now. Still in the medical field technically, but I don't watch people die anymore. Can't. Not after what happened with Raymond Cooper. Raymond was 67, terminal pancreatic cancer, the kind that moves fast and doesn't give you much time to say goodbye. He had maybe 2 weeks left when I started caring for him, and honestly, he was one of the kindest patients I'd ever had. Funny, too. Even dying, he'd crack jokes to make his wife Clara smile. They'd been married 43 years. You could see it in the way she looked at him, like he was still the same guy she fell in love with, not the frail man fading in that hospital bed. I'd been divorced for 3 years at that point, no kids. The infertility issues broke my marriage before we could fix anything else. I lived alone in a rental that smelled like old carpet, and most nights I'd drink too much wine just to stop thinking about work, about all the people I couldn't save. You watch enough people die and you start feeling powerless. Like, what's the point of being a nurse if all you do is make dying slightly more comfortable? It was a Wednesday afternoon when Clara asked me the question. Raymond was sleeping, hooked up to his morphine drip, and she pulled me aside in the hallway. Her eyes were red from crying. "Is there anything?" she said. "Anything at all that could save him?" I gave her the standard answer, told her the cancer was too advanced, that we were focused on keeping him comfortable. No, now. She nodded, but I could see she wasn't really hearing me, just hoping I'd give her a different answer. My coworker Beth overheard us. She was one of those older nurses who'd been doing this forever, seen everything. After Clara went back to Raymond's room, Beth pulled me aside. "There's a house," she said quietly, "up in Whitley County. Been empty for years. My grandmother used to tell stories about it. People went there dying, came back healed. But someone always died after. Someone unrelated." She shrugged. "It's probably bullshit, but I thought you should know. For the Coopers." I should have laughed it off. Should have forgotten about it. But that night, after my shift, I went home and started searching online. Found message boards, local legend sites, even a few news articles buried deep in search results. The Healing House on Old Mill Road, built in 1890 by a doctor named Emmett Stone, who practiced what people back then called experimental medicine. He died in 1920, and the house had been abandoned since 2005. The stories were all similar. Sick people would visit the house, and within days they'd recover. No explanation. But someone in the county would always die within a week. Someone healthy, someone young. Car accidents, heart attacks, aneurysms. Random deaths that seemed unconnected. Most people wrote it off as coincidence. Small town, people die. But there were too many stories for it to be nothing. I didn't believe in curses. I'm a nurse. I believe in science, in medicine, in what I can see and measure. But Raymond was dying, and Clara was breaking, and what if there was something to it? What if? Friday evening, after my shift, I drove to the house. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. It was a 2-hour drive into the mountains, winding roads that got narrower the farther I went. The house sat at the end of a dirt road that looked like it hadn't been maintained in decades. Victorian style, 3 stories, remarkably intact for being abandoned 19 years. The door was unlocked. "Hello?" My voice echoed in the empty front hall. No answer. Just an old house with peeling wallpaper and dust thick on every surface. Most of the rooms were what you'd expect, empty, decaying, unremarkable. But the room on the second floor was different, completely furnished. A hospital bed that looked antique but somehow clean, medical equipment that should have been rusted and broken but looked functional, shelves lined with bottles and dried herbs. And above the bed, carved deep into the wall, "One life for another, balance must be maintained." I found a journal on a desk near the window. The handwriting was old-fashioned, careful. Dr. Emmett Stone, 1890 to 1920. I sat down and started reading. He described his theory like it was physics. "Life force is finite in any location," he wrote. "To save one life, another must end. Not murder, natural balance. The house facilitates this exchange. I bring the dying here, place them in the healing bed, they recover. Someone else, somewhere in the county, dies to maintain balance. It's not evil, it's mathematics." There were dozens of entries. He'd saved 47 people over 30 years. 47 others had died in their place. Strangers, killed by what looked like natural causes. Heart attacks, strokes, accidents. The house chose who paid the price. He didn't control it. The final entry was dated March 1920. "I am dying. Cancer. I could use my own house, save myself. But who would die for me? Some innocent? I can't make that trade for myself, only for others. Dr. Stone died that spring, refused to save himself." I sat in that room for 3 hours, just thinking. Raymond was dying. Clara would be destroyed. What if I brought Raymond here? He could live. Someone else, some stranger, would die. But Raymond would live. Is that murder? Or is it choosing to save someone instead of letting them die? I didn't sleep that night. Saturday, Raymond got worse. The pain was breaking through even with the morphine. Clara sat beside him, holding his hand, crying. "I'm not ready to lose him," she whispered to me. "We were supposed to have more time." I couldn't stop thinking about the house. One life for another. Raymond could have years, not days. But someone's mother, father, child would die in his place. Sunday morning I told Clara about it, everything. The house, the journal, the trade. She stared at me for a long time. "You're saying Raymond could live, but someone else would die?" "That's what the stories say. I don't know if it's real." "Would we know who died?" "I don't think so. The journal said it seemed random. Someone in the county dies of natural causes within a week." "Natural causes? So not murder?" "The doctor said it was balance. Life force exchange." Clara was quiet. Then, "That's bullshit rationalization. It's killing someone to save Raymond." Long pause. "When do we go?" We told Raymond that evening. He was weak but coherent. "Absolutely not," he said. "I won't let someone die so I can live a few more years. I've had a good life, my time is coming. Let me go with dignity." Clara started crying. "But I'm not ready." "You'll never be ready, love. But we don't get to choose. And we especially don't get to choose at someone else's expense." That night I thought, what if I took him anyway? Sedated him, drove him to the house without telling him? He'd wake up healthy. Clara would have her husband. Yes, someone would die. But people die every day. What's one more death if it means saving Raymond? I was horrified that I was thinking this, but I was thinking it. Monday morning, I told Beth I'd found the house. She grabbed my arm hard. "Don't," she said. "My grandmother used it in 1967. Her husband was dying. She took him there. He recovered. 3 days later, her 22-year-old daughter died of a brain aneurysm. My grandmother lived with that guilt until she died. The hose. Use doesn't let you choose who pays." Tuesday, the doctor said Raymond had maybe 3 days left. His organs were shutting down. I watched Clara say goodbye to him. Watched her heart break. In real time. I could stop this. I could save him. That night I went back to the house alone. Sat in the healing room. "If you're real," I said out loud, "show me." Nothing happened for an hour. Then the medical equipment turned on. Monitors beeped. The bed adjusted itself. The room got warmer. And I heard a voice, not out loud, but in my head. "Bring him. I will save him." Who will die? Someone whose thread is weak. Someone close to ending anyway. I don't kill the healthy. I simply redirect the energy. That's still killing them. They die when their time comes. I simply choose when. Your patient dies in 3 days regardless. Someone else dies on their own timeline, just accelerated. Balance. I started convincing myself it made sense. What if the house really did take from people who were dying anyway? Then it wasn't murder. It was triage, choosing to save someone who had people who loved them. Medical ethics does this all the time, choosing who to save when resources are limited. Wednesday, Clara found me. "I've thought about it. I want to use the house. Raymond won't agree. But he's unconscious now, heavily sedated. We could take him. He'd never know until he woke up healthy." I was shocked Clara was suggesting it. But wasn't it what I'd already been considering? "I know it's wrong," she said. "I don't care. I can't lose him." We planned it for Thursday morning, during shift change when fewer staff were present. Tell everyone we were moving him home for his final hours. Drive him to the house. See if it worked. Thursday morning, 5 a.m. I stood over Raymond's unconscious body. I could still walk away, let him die naturally, no blood on my hands. But Clara was waiting in the hallway. We moved him, signed him out as home hospice care, loaded him into my van. The 2-hour drive was silent. Clara held Raymond's hand the whole time. I kept thinking I should turn back. I didn't. We carried him upstairs, placed him in the healing bed. His vitals were extremely weak. Hours left, maybe. The voice came back. "Leave him. Come back tomorrow." We drove back. Didn't speak. What do you say after you've just tried to save someone by killing someone else? 7 p.m. I got a text from a nurse friend at the county hospital. Sad news. You know Sarah Mitchell, the paramedic? She collapsed at work. Brain aneurysm. Dead at 32. Just like that. Sarah Mitchell. Young, healthy, mother of 2. I'd met her once at a conference. She was dead. 8 p.m. Clara called, voice shaking. I went to the house. Raymond's awake. He's healed. Angela, his color is back. The cancer, I think it's gone. It worked. Sarah Mitchell was dead. Raymond Cooper was alive. Friday morning, Raymond was transported home. Tests showed no cancer. But when I visited, he was furious. What did you do? Clara told me. You brought me to that house. Someone died, didn't they? I told him about Sarah. He went pale. I know her. She treated me once, 2 years ago. She was kind. His voice broke. And now she's dead. Because of me. You had no right. You murdered her. Raymond was healed physically, but he stopped eating, stopped speaking. The guilt destroyed him. Clara begged him to live, to honor Sarah's sacrifice. But he couldn't. I went to Sarah's funeral, sat in the back, watched her husband David and their 2 kids cry. Emma was 8, Noah was 5. I'd killed their mother to save Raymond. I went back to the house, screamed at it. You said you took from people who were dying anyway. Sarah was healthy. She had an aneurysm forming for years. It would have killed her in 6 months. I simply moved the timeline forward. 6 months. You stole 6 months from her. And I gave Raymond Cooper years. The mathematics are sound. You chose who deserves to live longer. 3 months later, Raymond died. Not from cancer, from starvation. He stopped eating entirely. Guilt literally killed him. His obituary said donations could be made to Sarah Mitchell's Children's Education Fund. He'd left. I'm 36 years old, and I haven't taken a wildlife photograph in 5 years. I used to be pretty good at it, too. Freelance work for National Geographic, outdoor life, that kind of thing. Won some awards. But I gave it all up, moved to Arizona, and now I do portrait photography in a studio. My husband thinks I just got burned out. I've never told him the real reason. Back in October of 2019, I was living in Asheville, North Carolina. An editor called me with what seemed like the easiest assignment I'd ever get. Appalachian deer in fall. Classic stuff, bucks during rut, does with fawns, autumn scenery. I'd been doing nature photography for 12 years at that point, spent most of my time alone in the wilderness. I was comfortable with isolation, good at it even. This was supposed to be 3 weeks in the mountains of eastern Tennessee, camping and shooting. Easy money. The first 2 days went exactly as planned. I got some beautiful shots, worked my usual spots, everything felt normal. On day 3, I was driving down this unmarked forest road when I found an abandoned farmhouse at the end of a valley. The place looked like it had been empty since the 90s based on the decay, sagging porch, broken windows, that gray-weathered wood you only get after decades of neglect. But what caught my attention was the deer. There were dozens of them in the fields around the property. I counted at least 40, maybe more. Deer don't congregate in herds that size in Appalachia. They're browsers, usually in small family groups. But here they were, scattered across the open fields, surrounded by forest. From a photography standpoint, it was perfect. I decided to set up base there. No one had been around for miles, and the farmhouse would give me shelter. I pitched my tent inside the main room, more protected than camping outside, and used the porch for shooting. That first evening I photographed the deer from a distance with my telephoto lens. The shots were beautiful, but something felt off about their behavior. Watching through my lens, I noticed the deer moved strangely. Their gait was slightly wrong, like their back legs bent at angles that didn't match normal deer anatomy, and they didn't startle. I was loud, making noise, setting up my tripod and equipment, but they didn't run. They just watched me, all of them, facing my direction, standing too still. I told myself they were probably just used to human presence at some point. Maybe the family who lived here used to feed them. I went to sleep that night feeling uneasy, but not afraid. Not yet. I woke up at 5 a.m. for golden hour shots, opened the farmhouse door. A deer was standing 3 feet away. Deer don't approach humans. They just don't. I froze. The deer looked back at me, and that's when I saw its eyes. Deer eyes are positioned on the sides of their heads for spotting predators. This deer's eyes were too forward-facing. Predator eyes. Then it smiled. I'm not being dramatic. Its mouth stretched wider than any deer's mouth should, and I saw teeth. Not flat herbivore teeth. Sharp ones. I gasped and stumbled backward into the house. The deer didn't run. It just turned slowly and walked away on legs that bent wrong at the joints. I spent the next hour reviewing my photos from the previous day on my laptop. When I zoomed in on the deer faces, I noticed things I'd missed in real time. Some of them had too many joints in their legs. Some had mouths that opened wider than normal. In several shots where their mouths were slightly open, I could see human-like teeth. These weren't right. They weren't normal deer. I had internet via satellite connection, so I started searching. Deer with wrong features, Appalachia. That's when I found the forums and Reddit posts about not deer. Cryptid creatures that look like deer from a distance, but are something else up close. Predators that mimic deer. The theories ranged from evolutionary mutations to interdimensional creatures to something ancient, wearing deerskins. But the sightings were all from Appalachia, and they all described the same things I was seeing. I should have left right then. But I'm a photographer, and I was curious. Stupid, looking back now. I explored the farmhouse more carefully. In the basement, I found a pile of bones, mostly deer bones, but some of them looked wrong. I'm not an expert in human anatomy, but I'm pretty sure some of those were human femurs. Human skulls. The bones were stripped completely clean and cracked open for marrow. That night, I watched from an upstairs window. The not deer gathered in the field as the sun set. One of them dragged something, a coyote, freshly killed. The others circled it. They tore into it with teeth that were definitely not herbivore teeth. Sharp, pointed. They were carnivores, pack hunters, and they were using this farmhouse property as their feeding ground. Through my night vision camera, I saw something that still gives me nightmares. One of the not deer shook its body and its skin split. Underneath was something gray and hairless with elongated limbs. It shed its deer appearance like a snake shedding skin. After about 30 minutes, it grew new skin, fresh camouflage. The other not deer didn't react. This was normal for them. I found old newspapers in the attic the next morning. Headlines from 1994. Dennison family disappears from farm. The article described a family of 4 vanishing without a trace. House left abandoned. Car still in the driveway. Food on the table. No bodies ever found. The not deer had killed them. This had been their territory for decades. When I tried to leave, I packed all my gear and opened the front door. 20 not deer were standing between me and my car. Motionless. Watching. I closed the door. Tried the back door. More of them. They'd surrounded the house. I wasn't a guest here. I was prey. For 2 days, I stay. Ed inside, watching them from the windows. They were intelligent. They posted sentries. 2 or 3 always watching the house while the others hunted in the forest. They brought back kills, coyotes, foxes, rabbits. Once I watched them drag a black bear carcass into the clearing. They'd pack hunted a bear. They made sounds too. Not normal deer sounds, clicking noises, low-frequency rumbles, and occasionally, human voices. I heard one make a sound like a child crying. Another mimicked a man calling for help. "Please, someone help me!" They were using human sounds as lures. One of them was larger than the others. Its proportions were more wrong. Legs too long, neck too flexible, jaw that unhinged. The others deferred to it. It was the alpha, and it was particularly interested in the house. It approached every few hours, stood on the porch, looked through windows. On day 4, the Alpha stood outside the front window, made eye contact with me, opened its mouth and spoke in a human voice. Male, middle-aged. Christine Parker, photographer, age 36, lives alone in Asheville. My blood went cold. It knew my name. It had been through my gear, read my driver's license. You photograph us, it continued. Show the world. We let you leave. You stay silent. We kill you. Choose. I yelled back, "How do I know you'll keep your word?" The not deer tilted its head. We hunt, we feed, we survive. We don't need humans knowing we exist, but we don't waste energy killing those who can't reveal us. Photograph us, leave, publish nothing, live. I had hundreds of photos, close-ups of their wrong features, their hunting, their feeding, proof that not deer exist. This could be the discovery of the century, but I'd also be revealing predatory creatures to the world. I agreed. Fine, I'll keep your secret. Let me go. The Alpha stared at me for a long moment, then made that clicking sound, the OT. Her not deer backed away from the house, creating a path to my car. The Alpha said, "You leave now, sunrise. Take your evidence, but publish, and we will find you. We know where you live." Packed quickly and left at first light. The not deer were everywhere, but they didn't approach, just watched. I walked slowly to my car, hands shaking. Drove, looked in my rear-view mirror. The Alpha stood in the road behind me, watching. I didn't stop until I hit pavement. I drove straight to Asheville, got home, locked every door and window, pulled my camera's memory cards and looked at the photos. Hundreds of images of not deer. Undeniable proof. Video footage of them hunting, feeding, speaking. 2 days later, I sent a selection of photos to my editor. Not the most extreme ones, just enough to prove they were unusual. The article went viral. Photographer discovers anomalous deer behavior in Appalachia. Scientists wanted to see the full evidence. News outlets requested interviews. 1 week after publication, I started noticing deer in my neighborhood. Too many deer. In my backyard. In the woods behind my house. These deer stood too still. Watched my house. I recognized the behavior. I woke up at 3 a.m. to breaking glass downstairs. I called 911, locked my bedroom door. Heard footsteps on the stairs. Too many legs, wrong rhythm. Something scratched at my door. The Alpha's voice came through the wood. "You published. We warned you." Police arrived. The scratching stopped. I heard rapid movement back downstairs. 3 officers came in. "Ma'am, you called about an intruder?" My front window was smashed, but no one was inside. They found deer tracks everywhere. "Looks like deer broke your window, ma'am. Happens sometimes during rut season." After they left, I found my driver's license on the porch, the one from my wallet. Message received. I called my editor and demanded he pull the article. Said I'd made a mistake, that they were just diseased deer. Posted a retraction on social media. People called me a fraud. Scientists criticized me. My reputation was destroyed. But I was alive. I moved 3 times that year. Currently living in Arizona, far from Appalachia. I don't do wildlife photography anymore. Work in a studio doing portraits. I have nightmares about the not deer. 1 year after the incident, I received a package. No return label. Inside were my original memory cards from the farmhouse shoot and a note in shaky handwriting. "You kept the secret after your mistake. We return your evidence. Never come back. Never speak. Live." I took the memory cards to the desert and burned them. All evidence gone. That was 5 years ago. I'm 41 now. Married to someone who doesn't know this story. Sometimes I see news reports about hikers disappearing in Appalachia, and I wonder. But I can't warn anyone without putting myself at risk. Last month, a young photographer emailed me asking for tips on shooting in Tennessee. I typed back, "Stay away from abandoned farmhouses. If you see deer acting strange, leave immediately. Don't photograph them, just leave. Trust me." She responded, LOL. Okay, thanks for the weird advice. 2 weeks later, her social media went silent. Final post. Found amazing deer photography spot. Abandoned farm with huge herd. Going to camp here for shots. Her family reported her missing. Search teams found nothing. I could tell them what happened, but I won't, because telling means the not deer come for me again. Yesterday, I saw a deer in my yard. Rare in this neighborhood. It watched me. I watched it. For 5 seconds, we locked eyes. Then it walked away, moving perfectly normal. Just a regular deer, probably. I closed the curtain and went back to my normal life. But I know the truth I can never share. The Appalachian Mountains harbor predators that evolution forgot to make extinct. Predators smart enough to camouflage themselves as prey, smart enough to negotiate, smart enough to enforce their deals. Some abandoned house, as aren't empty, they're feeding grounds. And the only way to survive discovering them is to pretend you never saw anything at all. I'm 44 years old, and I run a small electrical contracting business out in West Virginia. Been doing this work for 22 years now. Got a wife, 3 kids, 16, 14, and 11. Good kids. I do the kind of jobs most electricians won't touch. Old buildings, complicated wiring, places that have been sitting empty for years. The money's usually good, and honestly, I need it. College funds don't fill themselves. This was back in early March. I got a call from a real estate company on a Thursday afternoon. They had a property they were trying to flip, an old farmhouse that had been abandoned since 2009. Owner died with no heirs, bank took it, and now they wanted to make it livable enough to sell. The power had been cut for 15 years. They needed a full electrical assessment and restoration, $8,000 for the complete job. I took it. That's 2, maybe 3 days of work for that kind of money. The house was out in rural Virginia, near the Kentucky border, built in the 1950s, 2-story farmhouse. Records showed the last guy who lived there was named Martin Vickers. Died in 2009 at 78, lived alone. Neighbors said he was strange, kept to himself. The real estate agent told me all this over the phone like it was just background noise. To me, it was just another restoration job. I drove out Friday morning around 8 with my truck loaded up. Voltage testers, wire strippers, replacement breaker boxes, conduit, wire, all the standard stuff. When I pulled up, I was surprised the place looked as good as it did. Structurally sound, roof was intact, but something was off right away. All the windows were boarded up. That's not unusual for abandoned houses, except these boards were on the inside. You board windows from the outside to keep people out. These were keeping something in. I unlocked the front door with the key the realtor gave me. The smell hit me first. Musty, yeah, but also organic, like a zoo. Animal musk, thick and sour. I called out, "Hello? Anyone here? I'm the electrician." Professional habit. You always announce yourself. Nobody answered. Inside was dark. Every window boarded meant no natural light. I clicked on my flashlight and stepped in. The beam swept across the walls and I saw scratches. Deep gouges in the plaster, running horizontally about 3 feet off the ground. Not furniture damage. These were made by something with claws, something that lived here. I should have left right then. Looking back, I wish I had. The electrical panel was in the basement. I found the stairs and headed down, flashlight in one hand, my voltage tester in the other. The smell got worse as I descended. Ammonia mixed with rot. The kind of smell that sticks in your throat. When I opened the main panel, I saw the wiring had been chewed through, but not by rats. The teeth marks were too big, too far apart. Something large had gnawed through copper wiring, and the marks looked fresh. Whatever did this was still around. That's when I heard the scratching, inside the walls, movement, lots of movement. At first I thought rats, but the sounds were too heavy, too coordinated. I tapped on the wall next to me. The scratching stopped. Then it started again, faster, agitated. I noticed holes in the walls then, circular openings about 8 inches across, worn smooth around the edges like they'd been used over and over. Tunnels. Something was using the wall cavities as a tunnel system through the house. I shined my flashlight into one of the holes. Nothing but darkness. Then two reflective eyes stared back at me. I jerked the light away. In the corner of the basement, I found a pile of shredded clothing and bones. I'm not a doctor, but I know human bones when I see them. A complete skeleton, still wearing rotted fabric. This was a person. I pulled out my phone to sound. All the police. No signal. I'd have to go outside. Behind me, I heard something crawling. Fast. Not on the floor, on the ceiling. I spun around and pointed my flashlight up. Something pale scrambled away into the shadows. Too fast to see clearly. But it was human-sized, moving on all fours. Skin was hairless and gray. I ran for the stairs. When I got to the first floor, the scratching sounds were everywhere, in the walls around me, above me in the ceiling, below me in the floor. The house was full of whatever these things were, and they were moving, surrounding me. One of them emerged from a wall hole near the kitchen. It crawled out slowly, and I froze. It looked human, or it used to be human. The body was emaciated, skin a pale gray color. It moved on all fours, but the joints bent wrong. The face was human but distorted, eyes too large, mouth stretched wider than it should be. Its fingers were elongated, nails grown into yellowed claws. It was naked. The smell coming off it was decay and ammonia. It turned its head toward me, opened its mouth, hissed. I saw a journal on a table near the front door. I grabbed it while keeping my eyes on the creature. My hands were shaking as I flipped it open. Martin Vickers' handwriting covered the pages. I found an entry from June 2006. My brother came to visit. He's been here 3 days. This morning I found him in the basement, changing. His skin was peeling. He was crying, said his bones hurt, said he couldn't stop it. By evening, he couldn't stand upright anymore. By midnight, he was crawling into the walls. The house did this to him. I kept reading, flipping through pages. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. The house has spores in the walls. I don't know what they are. Mold? Fungus? Something worse? Anyone who stays too long breathes them in. The spores change you, slowly, over days or weeks. Your bones soften, your joints loosen. Your mind simplifies. You become something that lives in walls, that crawls, that nests. My brother is the fourth person this house has transformed. I'm keeping them, in the walls, feeding them. What else can I do? They used to be human. The final entries were from March 2009. I'm changing now. I feel it. I stayed too long trying to care for them. The spores have infected me. My fingers ache, my spine curves. Soon I'll join them in the walls. This is my fault. I knew the house was dangerous. I should have burned it down. But they were my brother, my cousin, my friend. I couldn't kill them. Now I'll become one of them. I looked up from the journal. More of them were emerging from the walls. 5, 8, 12. They crawled along the walls, across the ceiling, over the floor. They surrounded me but didn't attack. Just watched, curious. I backed toward the front door. They followed, crawling. Their movements were insect-like, but they were too big, too obviously shaped like people. It was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. The nearest one opened its mouth, made sounds that weren't quite words. Help. The voice was barely human, strained, like vocal cords that didn't work right anymore. Part of their human mind was still in there. They knew what they'd been. They knew what they'd become. Then I realized something that made my stomach drop. The walls were covered in fine dust, almost invisible unless you looked close. I'd been breathing it for 45 minutes. The spores. I was infected. I ran for the door. The crawlers moved to block me, reaching out with those long fingers. Their skin was cold and damp. I shoved through them. They were surprisingly light, bones weakened from the transformation. I reached the door and fumbled with the deadbolt. They pulled at my clothes, my legs, not trying to hurt me, trying to keep me there. I got the door open and ran into the sunlight. The crawlers stopped at the threshold, hissing. The light seemed to hurt them. I didn't look back, just ran to my truck and drove. I went straight. To the hospital 2 towns over. Told them I'd been exposed to spores in an abandoned house. They examined me, found nothing wrong. Clear lungs, no fever. "What kind of spores?" the doctor asked. I didn't know how to explain. I just asked them to keep checking me. I went home and lied to my wife, Sarah, told her the job was too dangerous, structural issues. I wasn't taking it. She was confused. I'd already accepted the money. I said I'd return their deposit. Didn't tell her about the crawlers. Didn't tell her I might be infected. 3 days later, my fingers started aching. The joints felt loose. My hands were swollen. I told Sarah it was arthritis. She wanted me to see a doctor. I refused. I knew what was happening. I spent hours researching online. Fungal infection, bone structure, spores that cause mutations. Found nothing medical. Found cryptid forums instead. Stories about hollow crawlers. Appalachian legend. People who go into certain houses and come out changed. Science says it's impossible, but I was living it. By day 5, I couldn't hide it anymore. My fingers were too long, nails darkening to yellow. My spine had curved so much I couldn't stand up straight. Walking hurt. Crawling felt more natural. Sarah saw my hands, really saw them, and screamed. The kids came running and saw their father. I tried to explain, but my voice was changing. Words were harder to form. Sarah yelled at me to get away from the kids. I locked myself in the garage, told her through the door about the house on Henson Road. "Tell the authorities, burn it down, kill the things inside, they're suffering." Sarah was crying. "We'll get help, doctors can fix this." I told her no, they couldn't. This wasn't medical. By day 7, I couldn't walk at all, could only crawl. My skin had turned pale gray. My thoughts were simpler, harder to think. I was losing myself. I looked at my tools hanging on the garage wall. Could end it. But my hands didn't work right anymore. Couldn't grip anything. That night, I crawled to my truck. Could barely drive, but I managed. Drove back to that house. The front door was still open. I crawled inside. The other crawlers were there. They didn't attack. They accepted me. I was one of them now. Sarah called everyone. Police, CDC, anyone who would listen. They investigated. Found the house. Went in with hazmat suits. The official report said I'd been exposed to toxic black mold, suffered neurological damage. They said I was hospitalized in a specialized facility. No mention of crawlers, no mention of transformation. But Sarah knows the truth. She saw what I became. They told her I died from toxic mold exposure. Closed casket funeral. Life insurance paid out. She and the kids moved to Florida, far from the mountains. The house was demolished. The property's an empty lot now, for sale cheap. But nobody buys it. Sometimes people report seeing pale figures crawling through the trees at night, moving on all fours. The house is gone, but the spores might still be in the soil. 3 years later, Sarah got a letter. No return address. Inside was a crude drawing. Stick figures. A man, woman, 3 kids. The man was circled. Below it, in barely legible scratching, "Still me. Still love you. Don't come back." I'm still alive. Still conscious. Still remembering my family. Living in some government facility where they study me. Scientists trying to understand what I am, what created me. I thought I was just doing an electrical job. Simple work for good money. I didn't know the house was growing something in its walls. Something that rewrites what you are. The crawlers in that house used to be people. Now they're specimens. And I'm one of them. The spores are still out there. In other houses. Other walls. Waiting for the next person to breathe them in. I'll live for decades like this, remembering what I was, unable to return to it. That's the real horror, not death. Transformation into something that lives but can't truel. I live, and I'll carry that forever. I'm 39 years old, and I used to be an ICU nurse. Travel contracts mostly, 13 weeks here, 13 weeks there. New hospital, new city, every few months. I'd been doing it for 8 years by the time I took that contract in eastern Kentucky. Divorced, no kids, and honestly, I liked the nomadic lifestyle. It kept me from getting too settled, too comfortable. I didn't have to deal with people getting too close or asking too many questions about why I lived out of a suitcase. The hospital's contracted housing fell through about halfway into my assignment. I had 6 weeks left and needed a place fast. One of the nurses I worked with, good guy, friendly enough, mentioned his uncle had a house up in the mountains, been sitting empty for years. "You can stay there free if you don't mind the isolation," he told me during a shift break. "My uncle just needs someone there to keep squatters out anyway." Free housing is free housing. I said yes without thinking much about it. The place was about 30 minutes from the hospital, up a winding mountain road that got narrower the higher you climbed. It was bigger than I expected. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, living room with a stone fireplace. Built sometime in the 60s, my colleague said. His family used to use it as a hunting cabin, but they stopped coming after his uncle's brother died there back in 1998. Heart attack in the living room. The utilities were still connected. Uncle paid them out of habit or sentiment or something. The furniture was old but solid, just dusty, very dusty, and isolated. I couldn't see another house from any window. I arrived on a Sunday evening after my shift, right as the sun was dropping behind the ridgeline. Cell signal was weak but present. I unpacked my 2 duffel bags, wiped down the kitchen counter, and figured this would work fine for 6 weeks. Better than a hotel anyway. Quieter. That furt. Saint night, I was watching something on my laptop around 11 when I heard scratching at the front door. Not frantic scratching, like an animal trying to get in. Just deliberate. Slow. I got up and opened the door, half expecting a raccoon. There was a dog sitting on the porch. A massive black dog. Had to be 140 pounds, maybe more. Looked like someone crossed a mastiff with something else I couldn't identify. But it was the eyes that got me. Too intelligent. Too aware. It stared at me without blinking, and I felt this weird pressure in my chest, like the air had gotten heavier. "Hey, buddy," I said, because I've always liked animals. "You lost?" The dog didn't bark, didn't move, just stared at me for maybe 10 seconds. Then it turned and walked into the darkness beyond the porch light. I watched until I couldn't see it anymore. I figured it was a stray. Mountain dogs get big and half wild sometimes. I went back inside and didn't think much more about it. The next night, Monday, I came home from a 12-hour shift. My legs hurt, my head hurt, and I just wanted to microwave something and pass out. The black dog was sitting in my driveway. Same dog, I was sure of it. But this time, it was positioned right where I needed to park, dead center. I honked my horn. The dog didn't flinch, didn't even look at me. I had to park farther down, near the tree line. When I got out of my car and looked back, the dog was gone, just vanished. I stood there in the dark for a minute, listening to the silence. No insects, no wind, nothing, before I grabbed my bag and went inside. That's when I started Googling. Large black dog Appalachia. The results were unsettling. Black dogs. Death omens in British and Appalachian folklore. They have a dozen different names. Black shuck, barghest, hellhound. Supposedly, seeing one means death is coming, either yours or someone close to you. I'm a nurse, and I'm rational. I deal in facts and vital signs and medication dosages. I closed the laptop and told myself it was just a stray dog with a coincidental color. Wednesday, I was at work, treating an elderly man, stable condition, recovering from pneumonia. Standard case. I looked up from checking his IV and saw a large black dog standing in the hallway outside his room. Just standing there. Hospital hallway, fluorescent lights, linoleum floor, and a massive black dog. I stepped out to shoo it away. The hallway was empty. 20 minutes later, the patient coded. Sudden cardiac arrest. We tried to bring him back for 40 minutes. He died on my shift. I started paying attention after that. Every time I saw the black dog, someone died within hours. A colleague's father, heart attack. A stranger in a car accident I drove past on my way home. The dog would appear and death would follow. not causing it, just announcing it, like a herald. Thursday night, I got home and saw 3 black dogs in my yard. All massive, all identical, all staring at the house in perfect stillness. I stood at the window and counted them. 3 dogs, 3 deaths coming, or 3 omens for 1 death. I didn't know. They stood there for over an hour, not moving, barely breathing. Then they left together, walking in synchronized steps into the forest. I called my colleague the next morning, tried to sound casual. "Hey, weird question. You ever see any big black dogs around your uncle's property?" The silence on the other end lasted too long. "You're seeing the black dogs?" His voice had gone flat. "At the house?" "Yeah. Why?" "My uncle's brother, the one who died there, he saw black dogs for weeks before his heart attack, told everyone in the family. We thought he was having delusions from stress or something." He paused. "Then he dropped dead in the living room." My hands went cold. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I didn't think it was real. I thought my uncle was just superstitious." Another pause. "Marcus, there's a local legend about that house. Certain places in Appalachia attract black dogs. Crossroads, old graveyards, places where death has happened multiple times. That house, my uncle thinks it's cursed. The original owner died there in 1982. A renter died in 1991. My uncle's brother in 1998. Every 7 to 9 years, someone who lives there dies. And they all saw the dogs first." I did the math in my head. Last death was 1998. It was 2024 now. 26 years. Overdue. And I was living there, seeing the dogs constantly. I was next. Friday morning, I packed my car. I was leaving, contract or no contract. I'd sleep in my car if I had to. But when I turned the key, nothing happened. Battery dead. It had been fine the day before. I called for a jump start and waited in the house, watching through the window as 5 black dogs formed a circle around my car in the driveway. The tow truck driver was friendly when he arrived, chatting about the weather as he hooked up the cables. Then he glanced toward the tree line. His face changed. "You see them dogs?" I looked. 7 now, standing in a line at the edge of the forest. "I'm leaving," the driver said quietly. He unhooked the cables with shaking hands. "You should too." He drove away fast, leaving me stranded. I tried everything. Called an Uber. No drivers would come that far. Called a friend from the hospital. She agreed to pick me up, drove all the way out there, pulled into the driveway. She saw the dogs. I watched her face go white through the windshield. She backed out and drove away without even rolling down her window. I was trapped. I spent the weekend researching, found obscure folklore sites and old digitized books. Black dogs guard thresholds between life and death. They appear when death is certain. Fighting them is futile. Accepting them is the only way. By Saturday, there were 12 black dogs. They sat in a circle around the house, patient and still. I checked my vitals obsessively with my smartwatch. Heart rate elevated, hands shaky, dizzy when I stood too fast. Were these signs of an impending heart attack? Stroke? Something was happening to my body. I was sure of it. I wrote letters that night. One to my ex-wife, apologizing for being a bad husband. One to my parents. One to my colleague, telling him it wasn't his fault. I made peace with dying. I waited for it. Wondered if it would hurt. Sunday morning, I woke up, still alive, vitals normal. I looked outside. The black dogs were gone, all of them. I didn't understand. The death didn't happen. Then my phone rang. Hospital director. "Marcus, I need you to come in immediately. There's been an incident." The patient I'd treated Wednesday, the one who died, his family was filing a wrongful death suit. They claimed I'd given him the wrong medication. An internal review found evidence supporting it. Computer records showed I'd administered a drug the patient was allergic to. I knew I'd checked his allergies. I'm meticulous. I've been a nurse for 15 years. But the records said otherwise. The lawsuit turned criminal, involuntary manslaughter. I was fired, license suspended. Everything I'd worked for since I was 23 years old, gone. I faced 4 years in prison. The black dogs hadn't been predicting my physical death. They'd been predicting the death of my life, my career, my identity. Marcus Sullivan, the nurse, died. The person left behind was someone else entirely. I was convicted, served 3 years, got out at 42 with a criminal record and no way to ever practice nursing again. Moved back to Oregon, lived with my parents, worked at a grocery store stocking shelves for minimum wage. One evening, walking home from work, I saw a black dog on the sidewalk. Same eyes. It looked at me, and I knew what it meant. My father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer a week later. 3 months to live. I saw black dogs constantly after that. Outside the house, in hospital waiting rooms, at the edge of the driveway. They were heralding his death. He died peacefully 3 months later, with me holding his hand. At his funeral, I saw a single black dog sitting at the cemetery's edge. It nodded at me, I swear it nodded, and then left. I understood then. The black dogs aren't evil. They're messengers. They don't cause death. They announce it. Sometimes literal death. Sometimes the death of who you were. They appeared when my nursing career would die. They appeared when my father would die. They're just doing their job. I'm 47 now, still work at the grocery store. I volunteer at 3 hospices, sitting with dying patients even though I can't practice medicine anymore. Maybe this is what I was meant to do. Not save lives, guide deaths. Sometimes walking home at night, I see black dogs in the distance, heading toward someone's house. I used to fear them. Now I respect them. They're doing sacred work. 2 years after I got out of prison, my former colleague visited me. She was dying of cancer. Deathbed confession. She'd made the medication error, changed the records to frame me because she couldn't afford to lose her job. She had kids to support. She died 3 days later. Her confession was hearsay. No evidence. I'm still a convicted felon. But I don't hate her. I don't even hate the house. The house in Kentucky still stands, still empty, still calls the black dogs every few years. It's just a doorway, a thin place where they cross into our world. If you ever see the black dogs, don't run, don't fight. Accept that change is coming. Your life as you know it will end. But endings aren't always bad. Sometimes the death of who you were makes room for who you'll become. The black dogs are mercy. They appear so death doesn't take you by surprise. Most people die unprepared. But those who see the dogs get a warning, a gift of time. I still think about that house sometimes. Still wonder if I'd done anything differently. Would my life have turned out better? But honestly, I don't think so. The dogs knew. They always know. Death was coming for the person I was, and it came exactly when and how it was supposed to. I'm 28 years old now, and I stock shelves at the same Dollar General I was working at 6 years ago. Haven't moved up, haven't moved on. I tell people it's because the pay's decent and I know the routine, but honestly, after what happened in 2019, I just don't have the energy to chase anything bigger anymore. I live quiet, I stay local, and I never, ever go exploring abandoned places, no matter how much money someone says is sitting there waiting. Back when I was 22, though, I was different. I was always looking for the easy score, the quick cash that'd let me take a weekend off or buy something nice without checking my bank account first. So when my cousin Brett called me up on a Tuesday afternoon talking about free copper pipes, I didn't even hesitate. His contractor buddy had told him about this abandoned farmhouse out on Dead Creek Hollow. Said the place had pristine copper plumbing just sitting there, untouched since the early 90s. We could strip it out in one night, haul it to the scrapyard, split maybe $800 between us. For one night's work, that was rent money. That was 3 weeks of groceries. Brett picked me up around 7 p.m. in his beat-up Ford, backseat loaded with pipe cutters, wrenches, headlamps, and a case of energy drinks. The drive out to Dead Creek Hollow took about 40 minutes, winding through back roads that got narrower and darker the farther we went. Brett told me what he knew about the place. Family had lived there until 1994, then just up and moved to Florida one day. Left everything. Furniture still in the rooms, dishes in the sink, clothes in the closets. Nobody knew why they left so fast, and nobody had touched the property since. It just sat there, rotting into the hillside. When we pulled up, I got my first look at the house, and something in my stomach dropped. It was a 2-story farmhouse, white paint peeling off the siding like dead ski in. But what really got me were the windows. All of them were intact, no broken glass, no boards. But they were painted black from the inside. Every single one. Like someone had stood in each room with a brush and blacked them out completely. "That's weird, right?" I said. Brett shrugged. "Old people do weird stuff. My grandma painted her bathroom windows black because she didn't want neighbors looking in." I didn't mention that this house was in the middle of nowhere, with no neighbors for miles. We tried the front door first, but it wouldn't budge. When Brett shined his light through the mail slot, we could see why. Furniture was piled against it from the inside. Chairs, a table, what looked like a bookshelf, barricaded. "Root cellar," Brett said, pointing to a set of angled doors near the side of the house. The cellar doors weren't locked, just rusted shut. It took both of us yanking to get them open, and when we did, this smell rolled out that made me step back and cover my nose. It wasn't just musty or moldy, it was wrong. Like pennies mixed with spoiled milk and something chemical, like battery acid. My eyes watered. "Jesus," Brett muttered, pulling his shirt up over his nose. "Place has been closed up 30 years. Probably just mold and dead animals." We climbed down the wooden stairs into the cellar, our headlamps cutting through the dark. And that's when I saw the scratches. They were everywhere. 4 parallel lines gouged deep into the wooden support beams. The stone foundation, even across the low ceiling, too wide apart to be from a cat or dog, too deliberate to be random damage. They went up the walls, across the ceiling, like whatever made them could walk on any surface. "Brett," I said quietly. "You seeing this?" He swung his light around. "Could be a bear got in here. They'll wreck a place looking for food." But I'd seen bear claw marks before. These were not the same. These were wrong. The spacing was too even, the depth too consistent, and some of them curved in ways that didn't make sense with how an animal's paw bends. The copper pipes were in the ceiling exactly like Brett's buddy said. Perfect condition, thick and clean. We should have just started working, cut what we needed, and gotten out. But I kept looking at those scratches. And then I noticed the wooden beams themselves. They had teeth marks in them, deep gouges where something had bitten into the wood, hard enough to splinter it. There were dozens of them. We went upstairs through the interior door, and the wrongness got worse. In the kitchen, we found bones arranged on the counter in perfect spirals. Rabbits, cats, birds, all cleaned white as snow. Neat little spirals, like someone had spent time making them pretty. And the wallpaper, someone had licked it off. I'm not kidding. There was a band around every room at exactly 5 feet high where the wallpaper was gone and the wall underneath was smooth and wet-looking, covered in some kind of dried residue. "We should go," I said. "Just let me check the bathroom pipes real quick," Brett said. "Then we'll grab what we can and bail." While he was gone, I found the journal. It was on the kitchen counter, water-damaged and swollen but readable. I opened it to a random page and read, "It lives in the walls during the day, comes out at night, getting bolder. Last night it stood outside Jimmy's door for 3 hours. We could hear it breathing." I flipped forward. "It's not an animal. Tommy saw it in the yard. Walked on all fours, but then stood up and looked at him. He said it has too many joints, like its arms and legs have extra elbows." My hands were shaking. I looked at the fridge, and there were kids' drawings still stuck there with magnets. Crayon pictures of a family, a house, a dog. And in the corner of one, barely visible, a pale stick figure with arms that bent in 3 places. Underneath it, in child's handwriting, "Friend who visits." The temperature dropped. I'm not exaggerating. In maybe 30 seconds, it got so cold I could see my breath. The house had been warm when we came in, stuffy even. Now it felt like a freezer. "Brett," I called out, "we need to leave, right now." That's when I heard something moving in the walls, not scurrying like mice or rats. This was slow, deliberate, sliding, like something large pulling itself through the space between the walls, dragging against the wood. Brett came running out of the bathroom, his face white. "Something grabbed me," he said, his voice high and tight. From inside the wall, something grabbed my ankle. He pulled up his pant leg. There were 4 long red marks on his skin, already starting to bruise. The spacing was too wide. The fingers, if that's what they were, had to be twice as long as human fingers. The sliding sound moved above us, between the ceiling and the second floor. Moving fast now. We should have run right then. We should have gone straight out the cellar door and never looked back. But Brett's headlamp caught something in the heating vent near the floor. Eyeshine. Too large. Too far apart. Reflecting white instead of red. Whatever was looking at us wasn't anything that should exist. It moved through the vent system, and we could track it. The banging, the breathing, the sound of metal bending under weight it wasn't designed to hold. Brett made for the front door, started pulling furniture away from it, and I went to help him. And that's when we heard it drop from the ceiling to the first floor somewhere behind us. Heavy thud, then movement, spider-quick, skittering across hardwood. Brett got the door open and ran for the truck. I was right behind him, and then I heard him scream, "It's on all 4s but tall as me standing." I looked. God help me, I looked. It was in the yard between Brett and the truck. Pale gray, skin stretched so tight I could see black veins underneath. Its arms reached the ground even though it was standing on legs that bent backward at the knees and forward at what should have been ankles but was another joint that bent the wrong way. Its fingers were a foot long each, and it was using them to pull itself forward while its legs pushed. And its head could rotate. I watched it turn completely around, facing backward on its neck, staring at Brett, while its body faced away. It was studying him, tilting its head, making these clicking sounds, whistles, patterns that almost sounded like language. Then it opened its mouth, and I saw rows and rows of human teeth, far too many, going back into its throat like a shark. And it spoke. It tried to say Brett's name. I'd yelled it when I saw him run. But the sound came out backward and too deep, like a recording played in reverse through a broken speaker. Brett tried to run past it, and it moved, shifted sideways in a way that made my brain hurt, blocking him without ever turning around. It was hurting him back toward the house, and I realized with sick certainty that it wanted us inside, wanted us to stay. That's when it started bringing out bones, from the woods, from the yard, from God knows where. Building a fence, ribs and femurs stuck into the ground in a circle around us like it was marking territory, like it was building a pen. It climbed the house then, straight up the wall like a gecko, leaving these greasy handprints on the siding, looking for ways in, looking for ways to trap us inside. Brett made another run for the truck, and I followed, but when we got there, the engine was gone. Not broken, not disabled. Removed. Precisely, carefully. Pieces laid out on the ground in order, like something that understood machines had taken it apart to study it. The creature dropped down behind us. Closer now. I could smell it. Battery acid and rotting fruit, so strong my eyes burned. It screamed, and that sound, God, I still hear it. It wasn't animal, it wasn't human. It was something between, something that knew how to scream like both and chose to, mix them together. We ran. Through the bone fence it had built, branches catching at our clothes, roots trying to trip us. It followed on all 4s, fast, keeping pace easily. But when we hit the gravel road, the real county road, it stopped. Just stopped at the edge of the property line and stood up to its full height, maybe 7 feet tall, and watched us, clicking those patterns. I still hear those patterns at night sometimes. When I'm falling asleep, I hear them in the walls of my apartment. We didn't go to the police. Who'd believe us? We were trespassing, planning to steal copper. And we had no proof, no pictures, nothing but Brett's scratches and our word. I looked up the property records later. The family that lived there, the ones who left in 1994. The parents and 2 kids just disappeared. Drove to Florida, yeah, but they never arrived. Car was found abandoned on I-75, doors open, engine running, no sign of them. I still work at Dollar General. Brett moved to Kentucky about a year after, said he couldn't stand being this close to Dead Creek Hollow. I don't blame him. I think about moving sometimes, but honestly, I'm not sure distance matters. Because sometimes, late at night, I hear clicking in my walls, and I find my things moved. Just slightly, just enough to notice. Like something's still studying me. Like something followed us home and is still trying to figure out what we are. I don't talk about this much. People think you're crazy when you tell them there are things living in abandoned houses that aren't animals, aren't human, but sure as hell are something. But you asked why I never leave town, why I work the same dead-end job, why I keep my doors locked even during the day. Now you know. I was 19, working the drive-thru at McDonald's in Charleston, when my friend Jaden messaged me about this YouTube video he'd found. He was always chasing some kind of internet fame, had like 3 different channels that never took off. This time it was about Coal Company Row, these abandoned mining houses way up in the mountains near Beckley. The video showed 30 identical houses standing in a perfect line, all of them built in the 1920s for miners and their families. They'd been empty since 1978 when a cave-in killed 11 men and the whole operation shut down. What made it interesting, at least to Jaden, was that house number 17 supposedly had fresh food appearing in it every single day. Urban explorers had documented it for years. No electricity, no running water, nobody living there for almost 50 years. But someone or something was setting out meals like clockwork. Jaden offered me $50 to be his camera guy for the day. I was saving up for a better car, and honestly, I didn't believe any of it was real. Probably just some local prankster leaving food to mess with people. We drove 3 hours into the mountains on a Saturday morning, following GPS directions that got worse the further we went. The paved road turned to gravel, then to dirt, then to something that was barely a path. When we finally found Coal Company Row, I understood why people called it creepy. The houses stood in this unnaturally straight line, each one identical to the next, all of them leaning slightly to the left like they were exhausted. They looked like broken teeth jutting up from the ground. The paint had peeled away decades ago, leaving gray wood that was almost black with rot. Warning signs covered most of them. No trespassing, condemned, enter at your own risk. All official looking with county seals. House number 17 was different. Its door hung wide open. Every other house as boarded up tight, but this one invited us in like it had been waiting. Jaden practically ran toward it with his camera already recording. I followed slower, carrying the backup battery and the light rig he'd bought specifically for this trip. The smell hit me first, like a butcher shop, all raw meat and blood, but mixed with something sweet that reminded me of fruit rotting in a hot car. It made my stomach turn over. Inside, the house looked almost normal. Furniture still in place, pictures on the walls, a kitchen table with chairs arranged around it. But 7 plates sat on that table, each one holding food in different stages of decay. The nearest plate looked fresh, like someone had just set it down hours ago. A sandwich with tomatoes and lettuce, the bread still soft. The next plate held what might have been the same sandwich, but days old, the bread growing fuzzy with mold. The pattern continued down the line, each plate progressively more rotten, until the last one was just a pile of black slime. "Holy shit," Jaden whispered, filming everything. "This is perfect. This is exactly what the video showed." I got closer to the table and realized something was wrong with the food itself. The meat in the sandwich had no visible grain or texture, like it hadn't come from any animal I'd ever seen. The tomato slices were shaped wrong, with too many chambers inside, and the seeds looked more like tiny teeth than seeds. The bread had these thin, dark lines running through it that almost looked like veins. The walls were sweating. Not water, but something thicker, warmer. When I touched it, my finger came away sticky, and it smelled like copper. The temperature in the house felt wrong, too. warmer than outside despite no heat source, and the air was heavy, hard to breathe. Jaden moved into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. I don't know why it surprised me that it wasn't working. Of course there was no power. But inside were dozens of wrapped packages, all labeled with dates. Some of them were dated for next week. He picked one up, and I saw his hand shake, a little as he unwrapped it. The meat inside pulsed, just once, but we both saw it. A slow, rhythmic movement like a heartbeat. "Okay," I said. "We got the footage. Let's go." "Are you kidding? This is incredible. We need to check out the rest of the house." I noticed the basement door then. 7 deadbolts ran down its length, all of them locked from our side. Deep scratches gouged the wood underneath the door like something had been clawing at it from below. The scratches were fresh. I could see white wood underneath, not weathered or dark like the rest of the house. Jaden picked up a piece of bread from one of the plates. When he tore it in half, it bled. Actual blood, warm and moving. But the color was wrong. Too dark, almost purple. He dropped it immediately, and we both just stared at it lying on the floor, still bleeding. That's when I heard the breathing. Deep, wet sounds coming from inside the walls, like lungs the size of oil drums expanding and contracting. The rhythm was too slow for a human, too large for any animal I could think of. Jaden heard it too because his camera started shaking. I found photographs tucked into picture frames, shoved behind the existing photos. They showed meals being eaten at the table, but the people in the pictures had no faces. Their heads were just smooth skin where features should have been, but they were holding forks and lifting food to where their mouths should be. On the kitchen counter sat a cookbook, handwritten, with recipes for things that didn't exist. Lung fruit salad, bone pudding, nerve soup with fresh garnish. The handwriting was perfect, mechanical, like a computer had written it trying to mimic cursiveness. The sink was full of dishes, and as I watched, they were cleaning themselves. Water ran upward out of the drain, soap moving across the plates in patterns that made no sense, cleaning in reverse. I grabbed Jaden's arm and pointed, but he was staring at the pantry. The pantry shelves held mason jars full of preserved things. Body parts, but not from anything I recognized. The eyeballs were too large, with pupils that had fractured patterns instead of circles. The tongues were segmented like insect bodies. Everything was labeled with dates going back decades. Jaden checked his watch. "It's almost 2 p.m. That's one of the feeding times on the calendar." I hadn't seen the calendar, but now I did. Hanging on the wall with 3 times circled every single day. 6 a.m., 2 p.m., 10 p.m. Never missed, according to the notes written in the margins going back months. We heard it coming up from the basement. The deadbolts were still locked. The door wasn't moving, but we heard something rising. Then it started coming through the floor, not breaking it or pushing through, but seeping up like the wood had turned liquid. It emerged slowly, reforming as it rose. The size of a bear, but it moved like an octopus, pulling itself into the room with limbs that weren't quite limbs. What I thought was black fur was actually millions of tiny tentacles, each one moving independently, creating a rippling effect across its body. It had no visible eyes or mouth, but it oriented toward us immediately, knowing exactly where we stood. It moved to the counter and started cooking. The tentacles moved so fast they blurred, pulling ingredients from nowhere, assembling them with impossible precision. Then I realized the ingredients were coming from inside itself. The thing was vomiting out partially prepared food, already cooked, already seasoned. It assembled sandwiches using meat from its own body, and the wounds regenerated instantly. Bread grew from spores it released, rising and baking in seconds on the counter. It plated everything perfectly, arranged garnishes, even folded napkins with absolute precision. Then all the tentacles pointed at us, every single one, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all orienting in our direction at once. It started moving toward us, carrying plates, a little as he unwrapped it. The meat inside pulsed, just once, but we both saw it. A slow, rhythmic movement like a heartbeat. "Okay," I said. "We got the footage. Let's go." "Are you kidding? This is incredible. We need to check out the rest of the house. I noticed the basement door then. 7 deadbolts ran down its length, all of them locked from our side. Deep scratches gouged the wood underneath the door like something had been clawing at it from below. The scratches were fresh. I could see white wood underneath, not weathered or dark like the rest of the house. Jaden picked up a piece of bread from one of the plates. When he tore it in half, it bled. Actual blood, warm and moving. But the color was wrong. Too dark, almost purple. He dropped it immediately, and we both just stared at it lying on the floor, still bleeding. That's when I heard the breathing. Deep, wet sounds coming from inside the walls, like lungs the size of oil drums expanding and contracting. The rhythm was too slow for a human, too large for any animal I could think of. Jaden heard it too because his camera started shaking. I found photographs tucked into picture frames, shoved behind the existing photos. They showed meals being eaten at the table, but the people in the pictures had no faces. Their heads were just smooth skin where features should have been, but they were holding forks and lifting food to where their mouths should be. On the kitchen counter sat a cookbook, handwritten, with recipes for things that didn't exist. Lung fruit salad, bone pudding, nerve soup with fresh garnish. The handwriting was perfect, mechanical, like a computer had written it trying to mimic cursiveness. The sink was full of dishes, and as I watched, they were cleaning themselves. Water ran upward out of the drain, soap moving across the plates in patterns that made no sense, cleaning in reverse. I grabbed Jaden's arm and pointed, but he was staring at the pantry. The pantry shelves held mason jars full of preserved things. Body parts, but not from anything I recognized. The eyeballs were too large, with pupils that had fractured patterns instead of circles. The tongues were segmented like insect bodies. Everything was labeled with dates going back decades. Jaden checked his watch. It's almost 2 p.m. That's one of the feeding times on the calendar. I hadn't seen the calendar, but now I did. Hanging on the wall with 3 times circled every single day. 6 a.m., 2 p.m., 10 p.m. Never missed, according to the notes written in the margins going back months. We heard it coming up from the basement. The deadbolts were still locked. The door wasn't moving, but we heard something rising. Then it started coming through the floor. Not breaking it or pushing through, but seeping up like the wood had turned liquid. It emerged slowly, reforming as it rose. The size of a bear, but it moved like an octopus, pulling itself into the room with limbs that weren't quite limbs. What I thought was black fur was actually millions of tiny tentacles, each one moving independently, creating a rippling effect across its body. It had no visible eyes or mouth, but it oriented toward us immediately, knowing exactly where we stood. It moved to the counter and started cooking. The tentacles moved so fast they blurred, pulling ingredients from nowhere, assembling them with impossible precision. Then I realized the ingredients were coming from inside itself. The thing was vomiting out partially prepared food, already cooked, already seasoned. It assembled sandwiches using meat from its own body, and the wounds regenerated instantly. Bread grew from spores it released, rising and baking in seconds on the counter. It plated everything perfectly, arranged garnishes, even folded napkins with absolute precision. Then all the tentacles pointed at us, every single one, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all orienting in our direction at once. It started moving toward us, carrying plates, the